Hit high. Wind going out that way. Back to the wall. Servillo watches it leave. Goodbye home run. A 3-1 shot for Jack Kenley.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of Conversations with Paul Brown. We are at a gym in downtown Anderson, and our guest this week is a fairly newcomer to the Anderson community, and he hopes he doesn't stay here long because he's got a plan and he's got a trip he wants to make. Jack Kenley is our guest. If you may remember, we interviewed his dad, who is the new CEO at AdMed Health. Do you remember your first organized league?
The first one that I can recall was one when I can't remember how old I was, but all I remember is my sister was on my team with me. We were the RNS cabinets, and my dad coached, and one of his buddies, and yeah, that was a blast. I don't remember a whole lot from it, but I remember before we moved to Anderson, I pulled up a lot of the baseball stuff that we had that Mom was looking through, trying to figure out what to throw away.
In high school, you just continued playing ball at what level, and were you doing travel teams too?
Yeah, so high school is always going to be a challenging time for those looking to play at the next level, just because teams are recruiting at earlier and earlier or younger ages. But in high school, I had awesome coaches, Coach Lane McCarter and Collins Day, who really pushed. They had good relationships with teams around the area. I did play travel ball, and that kind of helped me get my name out there some too. But Coach Day and Coach Mack did a great job of putting my name out there for me as well. Ended up finding Arkansas through them, actually. You can play travel ball, and you can get to go to places like Atlanta. Some of my best memories are World Wood Bats in Atlanta, and that was with a travel team that all we did was get out of our area. We played good competition, but we were a team, and we were smaller than some of those prospect teams, and we had a blast doing it. But I still talk to every one of those guys on that team, and that might not be the team that gets a ton of attention from scouts and stuff like that. But if you want to play baseball a little higher level than, let's say, like your church league or something like that, travel ball is very doable, especially when you have great communities like this in Anderson that's really good for baseball, and Atlanta just down the road. When I was at Arkansas, I played third, second, and short. My freshman year, I played a little bit of outfield, not all that much at all. But in high school, I was third for 1 year, second for 1 year, and short for 2. So I've gotten experience just about everywhere. I really love short because you get a lot of area to run. You got a lot of range there, and I feel like that's where I can be utilized pretty well. My lateral movement that way and my arm. But I like the left side of the infield, so third or short.
Okay.
But middle of the infield has its perks too. It's more like a game you have to play with yourself. That you're not gonna, obviously, if it's not gonna interest you or like it's boring to you, you're not gonna do it very well. But if you're sitting out in the infield and you're trying to stay locked into the game, some of the best things to think about are what's in front of you. So this runner comes up or this batter comes up, and big old dude, first baseman or something like that, okay, he's not gonna be all that fast. If he hits a ball out, the outer parts of my range, I might have a little more time to get rid of this, that kind of stuff. And it's not so much of going through situations in your head, like rattling them off like you would memorize answers to a test. Some of the most beneficial things you can do for yourself is play like, okay, well, what if this happens, or if this takes me over here, then I might want to do this or something like that. And just going over that kind of stuff in your head, it may seem really complex, but those kind of small differences, if you just remind yourself of them every so often, then those can be the difference in making those outs.
Tell me how you were informed that Arkansas was going to be your destination.
Still haven't figured out which scout it was that saw me. I think it was probably one of the grad assistants or something like that, but he basically reached out to my head coach and said, hey, it'd be a good idea if you sent Jack to one of our, it's not a prospect, it's like a skills camp that schools run.
All right.
But basically he said it'd be a good idea if you go, and I booked it and I scheduled it and showed up to the skills camp. And I had talked to them a little bit before we did the skills camp. I met with Coach Van Horn. We took a tour of the campus and stuff like that, which is what I guess they do to the higher prospect, the bigger name guys. My belief is that those guys are nice enough people. If you just walked up to them and said, "Hey, you got a second? You show me around,"
yeah,
they would. They're just great people as well. But went through the camp. I did okay. I remember doing okay. Skills-wise, I did fine. My numbers were all pretty good, so they knew, and I didn't flash anything new that they hadn't seen before. But I remember hitting a double into right center field. Dave pulls me out of the camp a little bit early, and we go up to his office and we were talking, and he said, "We're prepared to offer you." I remember sitting there and looked over at my dad, and he looked over at me, and I can remember just the huge weight just lifting off my shoulders, and that was dream come true at that point.
What does that mean when they offer you a scholarship as far as your responsibility now towards an education?
The way that it works for me was Tennessee is a border state to Arkansas, and I was able to get some technically in-state scholarship because my grades were good enough. So what we did was we balanced some academic scholarship with the athletic scholarship under the assumption that I would maintain the same grades throughout the semester.
And what were the rigors of practice like? This is your first big time away from home? Mm-hmm. No more mom's cooking?
Yeah, we had it pretty good though. There's a lot of things that piled up that made practice especially difficult. In the fall we had 6 a.m. lifts. A lot of us had 7 a.m. classes. So we would have 6 a.m. lift, go straight from there to the business college, have class till about, I'd say like 12:45, 1 o'clock or so. And then from there we would have just enough time to get lunch on the way to the field, practice from about 2:30 till about 6:30. That was difficult in that basically once you wake up there's no rest period. It's just full go mode. And then that's just day after day. Once you leave practice, you could go to the Jones Center for tutor sessions, for dinner, whatever. So most of the time my day started at 6, ended at about 9:30, 30 minutes before the Jones Center closed.
Tell me what it was like to play in the College World Series.
It was so much fun. If anyone can get the chance to go to Omaha, I absolutely recommend it. The culture around that town is just phenomenal. Baseball is just phenomenal. But we were actually, in 2017, that's the longest any team has ever been in Omaha. We had 3 rainouts, I think, a couple delays, but that was just so much fun because if you've ever been, the steakhouses in Omaha are phenomenal.
Moving up to this big show, how did that come about?
I attribute a lot of that to the consistent playing time that I had my junior year. Got the call basically day before the season started that I was going to need to start working at second base, which is something I hadn't done at all during the fall. Was something I was not really comfortable with. I'd been primarily on the left side of the infield, but Coach Van Horn said that, we need you over there. I said, whatever, and I held it down. I had more putouts at that position than anyone else in the league, across, besides like the first baseman. But I did really well defensively and just had a chance to get settled in at the plate and took off there. So I kind of knew the draft was a very legitimate possibility. And I went and got an agent. And at that point, it was basically like deciding what my number was, and understanding how that process would go, because basically once it happened, once you get towards the end of the season, you kind of find out what you're looking at.
How do you decide what agent to go with?
That's difficult. My guy's great. My advice would be just to find someone you trust.
And he ended up doing well by you?
He did. We kind of said that we wanted to go top 10 rounds, and that was something that if you would have told me that when I was a little boy, that you're going to get drafted in the top 10 rounds one day, that would have been a dream come true. And it's been wonderful, and that did great things for me, especially when I got into the lower levels. I advanced a lot quicker than, say, some other guys drafted a little bit lower.
You've been to spring training. Mm-hmm. What was that like, and how did you prepare for that?
Spring training was difficult in the sense that that was the that was the first time that I'd been around such high prospect guys, I guess. So I'll never forget this story as long as I live. The start of spring training, we all get physicals. So they tell us to fast before we give blood. And I've never been bad with needles. My freshman year, they told us to fast then too. And I didn't fully black out, but my vision got fuzzy. So I fasted the night before, and I wake up at 6 a.m. and I'm getting my blood drawn. And I'm doing okay, sitting in the chair, and the nurse is talking to me, and I see Miguel Cabrera start walking in, and I look at her, and it's like, is that who I think it is? And she said, yeah, that's him. Have you talked to him yet? And I said, no. I said, should I go talk to him? She said, you absolutely should. And when I looked at her and I looked back to Miggy, my vision just went. And I remember after that, I was just shaking, I was blacking out. And she kept telling me, she was like, talk to me, like, are you okay? And I remember just thinking, Miguel Cabrera's looking at me now. I gotta pull it together. So I didn't answer. I was just sitting there shaking the whole time. But I'll never forget that, and I doubt he will either, because it was right in front of him. But spring training was difficult. I got to see a lot of those guys, and it wasn't as nerve-wracking as I thought it would be. A lot of those guys are just out there having fun, and frankly, spring training is super serious for some, but others, it's just a chance to get around and mess around on the ball field.
What are the accommodations that Detroit has for you in Florida for spring training?
The first year guys, they put us up in a city-owned dorm. It's about 50 years old. I think rent is like $10 a week or something like that, and we pay a little bit of money for the cafeteria. But it has Wi-Fi, fancy enough, and the AC is always kicking. That place is an icebox. But little bitty cots. Sometimes you get a roommate. Sometimes you might get a TV in your room. But other than that, it's pretty bare bones.
Now, what are you anticipating this season?
My anticipation was to start up in Low A with the Grand Rapids, Michigan Whitecaps. They dropped the team. Now Michigan is High A. I think that's very attainable, having the spring training that I had the year previous, and with the work that I've been able to get done here and I'm going to do in Fayetteville.
And then your dream, obviously, is to play for the Detroit Tigers. Realistically, when might that happen on the fast track?
On the fast track?
If everything works out the way it could.
Within, I would like to do that within 4 years, because that gives me a chance to, I would say, get adjusted at each next level and be able to succeed. Because I don't want to just show up for a game. I want to be able to stick and be a dude on that roster. So, yeah, I could jump up there in the next, let's say, 2 to 3 if I have a phenomenal year. But being able to stick up there requires you to have a track record a little bit and to prove it.
When do you get your baseball card?
Oh, so I have a card. It's got a couple stats on it, but it's not very inclusive. There's not a ton, but it's cool. I've never really thought I'd see my face on a baseball card, but maybe one day it'll be worth something.
And your mom and dad have all kinds of them?
Oh yeah, mom's got a big old stack. I think the whole family's got a couple of them. Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Listen, thanks for taking time to tell us your story, Jack, and we wish you nothing but the best. It'd be great if, before we know it, Anderson has another big leaguer, and it'd be Jack Kenley playing for the Detroit Tigers. We want to thank him for sharing his story, and we want to thank each of you for tuning in and invite you to be back with us next week, same time, for our next edition of Conversations with Paul Brown. Until then, take care, everybody.